I'm going to read something I think might be very relevant right now. It was written in and around the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. I'm just going to read it as is. Response to Iqbal Ahmad's terrorism, theirs and ours. On political terror and private terror. Considering Ahmad's comments on the use of private forces to accomplish the ends of terror, including state-sponsored terror, the notion of the first primary motivator being that of being heard does not have the same utility for a smaller, politically disadvantaged group attempting to obtain some notice for their cause as a private group employed in the service of terror for state-sponsored actors. Their campaign is more of a campaign of silencing any opposition, and the terror visited becomes more of a symbolic hit than any sort of literal blow. Taking a sacred object and profaning it at a certain time that is of religious significance often is an act of private terror employed against those who may operate or believe in the significance of religious observance or symbols. The idea is to make an example of as a means of imbuing that image or symbol with references to feelings or thoughts of terror, including retaliation for the act of profaning. In this matter, it is not so much for the terrorist him herself to be heard, as much as it is to compel a response from another in relation that is then listened to for confirmation or justification for supporting further state-sponsored terror against that individual or group of individuals. Additionally, terrorism does not necessarily ascribe to a direct target to accomplish its goals. Often, terrorism is most successful when it compels someone else to move forward on effecting its agenda. A gangster's threat of fear of economic harm by requiring someone that is working in an illegal labor racketeering syndicate related to, say, a pension fund scam that benefits a criminal syndicate of drug dealers, also trafficking arms, can compel that person who is being extorted into cooperating with, say, detonations of remote weapons, targeting an individual or group of individuals who are the intended targets of the terrorists themselves. In this case, terror is visited twofold, or manifold, depending upon the nexus of the terrorist network, and that not only is the person being extorted into cooperating with the weaponization or detonation of a weapon used in the act of terror being terrorized, but so too is the community or individual targeted by the weaponization or detonation of the weapon employed. In this case, what might be considered an otherwise legitimate enterprise is terrorized into cooperating with visiting terror upon another, or be victimized by the terrorist him herself. This silent terrorism is among the most important components to fighting terrorism, and not just to expose the sleepers. It is also important because ultimately that is what sustains the financing of these terrorism syndicates that are motivated by and employed to financially destabilize a competitor. Now, this is pretty similar, the situations we're in now, but we have a serious matter that does not get adequately addressed. The Federal Reserve has been, or had been, compiling very comprehensive data on labor, not just within the United States, but also globally, including relative to the United States, for decades. But in the summer of 2017, it just discontinued this process. It stopped compiling its labor index. Sometime around then, the Federal Reserve began providing information, statements, considering terms related to executive compensation. Now, anybody that has been involved in discussions regarding organized labor, including whether or not to join a union, or whether or not to discuss things within a collective bargaining arrangement versus, shall we say, an arbitration agreement, understands there's a very distinct manner of categorizing people within any sort of workforce endeavor. A worker is not a manager, is not an executive. It's very important right now to know how many people are receiving unemployment compensation insurance for things going on in connection with COVID-19. How many people are receiving unemployment who themselves were not the original individuals associated with the accounts set up connected to unemployment? How many of them either agreed to or ex post facto are being enticed into agreeing to cooperate with acts of terrorism that are going on right now? How many people are allowing for themselves to be disingenuously positioned as an executive so that they can harvest as their own compensation somebody else's labor, which is also energy, bioenergy, produced by the individual? That also includes the energy that's used in the production of intellectual property. This is one of the reasons why, regardless of your political understanding or affiliation, property rights and access to and protection of private personal property, as distinct from property in trust, including the public trust, is very important. It's also another reason why slander, attempting to discredit people and their understanding of competency, including competency involved with cognizance of the terms of contract arrangements, is very important. Now, I do wish there had been due consideration of these matters, and rather than mischaracterizing the sorts of people you're working with before you have confirmation on what you have the potential to be working with, that there had been more forthrightness. Because dealing with workers' comp claims is not the same as discussing with people involved with setting Treasury policy how to rein in illegal derivative agreements that allow for the material conditions for financing acts of terrorism, right? Just so you know. And unfortunately, somebody should be right now attending to one, but you've called me in to deal with the other. And I have to let you know, I 100% support workers' rights. But I am disappointed to think that it has been allowed to be brokered down and downgraded to the point where we no longer even talk about means of production, while I am supposed to agree to allow for a representation of the true aims via abstraction so that one can hide the fact that they've agreed to be complicit with illegal activities, up to and including illegal activities that finance acts of terrorism. I don't have a very high threshold of tolerance, and my patience is exhausted. You understand? Think about it from a perspective of energy. Think about what you need to live. Think about what we all deserve to live. And think about what you're trying to ask for, especially insofar as you're not even asking the question you mean. As I said, I've been exhausted. I have no more to offer. If there's something else, I might have that.